Welcome to the Superhuman Ascension Podcast. My name is Caulen Lauria. I'm your host. And here we are live at the Ascension Brain headquarters, the Cryo Bodyworks Supercharged Wellness headquarters, and CBD Austin. And we do all types of different things for brain cognition, superhuman wellness, overall health, and a lot more. Today, we're going to be talking about consciousness, neuroscience, biohacking, and a lot more. And we have our guest, Adam Sudd. He is also known as the plant-based addict. We've got lots of fantastic, extraordinary stories to explore. So, Adam, thank you. Welcome on. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Yeah, for sure.
We actually have not met.
No, we've never met, but I've known about, if you're part of the Austin wellness community, everybody basically knows each other. So I've been aware of you for a bit, so I'm excited to be here.
Oh yeah, awesome. It's kind of funny with the digital community that we have.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're actually meeting people in real life, you're probably encountering them digitally.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's funny because when we were just sitting out there in your lobby area, you had that machine that creates the healing effect.
The Tesla coil biocharger.
Exactly. And you were talking about the neon gas and the different gases. And I saw on your story the other day that you were showing it. So when I walked in, I immediately knew what it was. I immediately had this story in my head of what takes place there because we have this connection that exists virtually. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got all sorts of different biohacking tools here. Some of the biggest initiatives that we have at Cryo Bodyworks here is fighting the 42.4% of obesity that exists in the United States. And we have some powerful programs that do just that. And we're launching some new things about that. But I know that that's kind of a part of your background as well. You've gone through an extraordinary transformation.
Yes.
And I'm really excited to learn about you and share that with the audience and find out what your story is.
Yeah, it's there's a long story and a short story, and I know that you and I could really get into some really interesting conversations here, so I'm going to keep this part of it short. But
we've got 30 minutes.
Yeah, so I grew up here in Texas, right? So I'm 7th generation Texan, so I was, raised in a cultural narrative of eating specific dietary styles, and that it was kind of like a definition of how you move through the world as part of your culture, right? That I was really not not with malice or ill intent, but sort of criticized. My dad.
What is criticized?
So my dad was part of the health movement early on. He's one of the founding investors of Whole Foods Market. He's one of the founders of Whole Foods Market. He currently is still with Whole Foods Market. And so growing up.
And that's extraordinary. That took place right here in Austin.
It did, yeah. And growing up, I got criticized a lot for wanting to eat, junk food. I'm born in 1982. I'm a child of the you could call it the greatest. For those who are listening, I'm using air quotes, the greatest junk food era of all time. And I was a little bit overweight as a kid, but it wasn't until there was a moment, I believe I was about 10 years old. And growing up in Texas in the summer, as a 10-year-old, run around all day long with just your bathing suit on, kind of running into the house, and my mom and my dad are there, and they asked me, they noticed, they said, "Oh, you already have love handles. You shouldn't have those." And here I am, 10 years old. I don't know what love handles are.
No.
Sure don't know how I got them. And so I asked them, what are you talking about? Asked them what love handles are. They explained it to me, and I look at my dad, and I see what I think are the same thing. And I said, well, he looks like he has them. And my mom said, well, you're only 10 years old. My dad says, you shouldn't have them right now. And it was like,
gosh, that must hit hard.
It did, because there was a moment before where I was completely accepting of myself, completely loving myself without judgment, physically, emotionally, everything. And then the minute that message was received, there was a condition placed upon me, which I believe that there were things about me that had to be met. There were conditions upon which I could and could not accept and love myself completely. And maybe even more overwhelming was the idea that if there's one condition, what are the other conditions that I'm unaware of?
And that's hitting me I'm just feeling all of the emotion from that. That's amazing.
And so it was like this constant anxious state of being, of hyper arousal, of how do I identify the cues that indicate to me the feeling of unworthiness
from your external environment.
From external
now
environment.
That's being internalized.
Exactly. And so I grew up closet eating. I got diagnosed with ADHD as a kid, Ritalin generation, nothing uncommon. But again, a message from a person of authority, a doctor in a white coat saying, essentially not his exact words, but, oh, here's something else about you that's broken, that is unacceptable to the rest of the world. And even more so to your parents who, when you're 10, they are your world. But no, don't worry about it. Because what we're going to do is we're going to give you a pill. And as long as you take this pill, no one's ever going to know.
This is a classic case, really.
It is. It's like, here's your pathway to acceptance. Just do this. And again, no malice, no ill intent, just what this state of affairs was. And I hooked into it, that like,
and how old were you?
I was like, it was 10, 12 years old, middle school-ish. 5th grade to middle school is when all this sort of took place. And then, high school is where things really started to, you could say, took a turn for the worse, but at the time it was like an amazing solution because I was late to start puberty. Who isn't an awkward freshman? But I was the awkward freshman, right? And so I wasn't invited to parties. I didn't have a lot of friends. And then my prescription from Ritalin got changed to Adderall. And all of a sudden I got invited to parties. All of a sudden I got people saying, oh, do you want to come hang out? Do you want to come to this, party tonight? And it became very quickly known to me that it was because I had a prescription for Adderall and that they would ask me to bring it. And
not because of who you are.
Right, not because of who I was. And the thing is, at the time I was like, this is phenomenal, right? Because what I was seeking was value I could offer other people. There's a great quote that says, loneliness is not the physical absence of people. It is the sense that you have nothing of value to offer anyone. And I show up, people are excited to see me. It's like the solution I've been seeking. And then I started using Adderall as a recreational drug. And what I noticed was that it was an almost immediate solution to everything that I believed was broken about me. It was an escape from a painful place, from a place of being that was too painful. And it worked, right? I lost the extra weight that I had. My dad and I's relationship started to click because I finally appeared to be the student that he saw as the acceptable student. And so when we would have these fights about my lack of study habits, all of a sudden, if I take extra Adderall, I can appear to be what I thought he needed me to be lovable. I had friends, I had girlfriends, got a scholarship to the college that I wanted to go to. And then in college, things really took a turn because more became not enough became my constant concern of how much do I have left? How long will it last? Where will I get more? How much will it cost? Where am I going to get the money? And over the course of the next few years, I ended up dropping out of school, moving back to Austin, engaging in criminal drug activity, becoming incredibly isolated, overwhelmingly depressed, and developed a secondary dependency to fast food. I was consuming about 5,000 calories of fast food a day. I was doing, let's say, the average prescription for Adderall is about 10 milligrams per day. So 10 milligrams for every 24 hours is the average prescription of Adderall that is prescribed to an individual today. I was doing 450 milligrams in a 24-hour period. I would do it for 6 days straight without sleeping.
Yeah.
And I reached a weight of 350 pounds at one point, and then life just became too painful.
Well, you had this surface level reprieve with the introduction of Adderall.
Absolutely.
But there was a lot more happening underneath the surface.
There's Russell Brand has a great quote about addiction. He says, the priority of any addict is to pacify the passage of day through some form of purchased relief. And what he's really saying is that at its core, addiction is about not being able to be present because your life has become too painful a place to be. And so Adderall became that solution for me to escape being present with myself because it was too painful to be present with myself and how things were going and my inability to live authentically and in a way that was true to my values. And on August 21st of 2012, I attempted suicide. And I tried to end my life by overdose. And I was in this place of constantly trying to hate myself and my life enough. because the belief was that if I could just hate myself enough, and if I could just hate my life enough, then I would want to change. And it just further disconnected me from any sense of meaning. That's the wrong path. Exactly. And survived with this overwhelming sense of relief, which I found to be oddly confusing.
What was the relief?
That I was still a part of it all. That I woke up realizing that the experience of relief in that moment was a result of there being something about myself and my life that I loved enough, that was meaningful enough, that even though I knew today was going to be as painful as the day before, I still wanted to be a part of it. And that asked me this question to consider what is suicide, because most people believe suicide is someone trying to end their life. But what suicide is someone trying to end their pain. And I decided that since pain was not enough for me to want to leave this world, how can I create an opportunity for me to, not just for myself, but for my parents to not have to go through the experience of saying, why did my son have to eat and drug himself to death?
Yeah. As painful as life can be, it's still worth it to be here.
Always.
No matter the hell that you're in, it's still worth it to be here. It's remarkable that we exist on this physical plane from, nothing.
It's, I would say this.
That's a blessing.
There's always greater solutions in life. I would say for 99% of the people, there are always far greater solutions in life than the ones that can be found in death. And I know that that's a state of ignorance because I don't know what's on the other side.
Yeah.
But that's my true belief. And, I've lost 6 friends to suicide since getting sober. I know that for most of them, it was about a belief that being sold this story, and we'll talk about it in a bit, about the story that's sold to individuals in recovery. And there was this belief that everything that was wrong about them is who they are. And that today is bad and tomorrow will be worse. And in this moment, it's the worst it's ever been. Mm-hmm. And there's no solution to it other than abstinence and avoidance. Mm-hmm. And, when I woke up on the floor and I called my parents, I checked into rehab, was diagnosed with diabetes, heart disease. I already knew I had erectile dysfunction, bipolar disorder, suicidal depression, anxiety disorder, sleep disorder, attention deficit disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder.
Wow.
Put me on a cabinet's worth of medication. And luckily, about a year before I checked into treatment, I had the opportunity to attend an event where I heard Rip Esselstyn, who is the executive producer of the Game Changers documentary. He's the creator of the Engine 2 diet and part of Forks Over Knives documentary originally. And I said, you know what? I don't understand the psychological and emotional stuff, but this diet seems to make sense.
Yeah.
And so let me do this thing. Let me create a foundation for positive change upon which I'm going to strengthen my recovery. Because, right now I know that diet is A plus B equals C to most degrees. But, emotional recovery for me at that point was very gray.
I'm so glad that you're getting into this. I want to talk about the miraculousness of nutrition.
Yes.
I also want to just go back real quick about avoidance of pain.
Yeah.
Life has growth opportunities, and that change can be painful, and we have to be able to face that. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things that I've developed a good routine of being able to face things before they get out of control, and deal with the pain that exists in that growth process.
Yeah.
And it's just so difficult, but it is liberating after that.
Absolutely.
And so I think we're in a bit of a revolution right now in terms of health. We're at the beginning stages of it, where people are doing things outside of the box, like ice baths. I mean, talk about having,
distress tolerance,
an absolute fight or flight freak out.
Yeah.
That's a great thing to do. We do those here, by the way.
Yeah.
Among, of course, cryotherapy and whatnot. But, people are finding and discovering this emotional, physical, mental, spiritual release from that. And there's something to be said about the complexity of our issues that can compound and exacerbate. And then we go into the topic which you were just about to bring up, which is the miracle of nutrition and how it has this miraculous effect of undoing the undoable.
Right. That's a really great way to put it.
Simplistically.
It is. The thing is, there's nothing uniquely special about the diet that I adopted. It wasn't built on some romantic sounding tropical berry from the Amazon rainforest, things like that. It was rice and beans and veggies and, tofu and things like that. And these are things that are commonplace. And within 4 months, the diabetes, the heart disease, the erectile dysfunction was completely reversed. Within 1 year, I had lost over 100 pounds, and I was off of every single medication. I was put on rehab, including all my psych meds, had every diagnosis removed from my chart. Had this truly transformative experience of needing to be comfortable being uncomfortable and building upon creating nutrition as a vehicle that was going to allow myself to reconnect to those meaningful bonds in life that had been severed over the course of time by various traumatic experiences, either to a minor degree or to an extreme degree, that give us that experience of being alive. And that experience alone was so profound that I just thrusted myself into this, quest for knowledge to empower other individuals, because I went through recovery with like 14 other guys for 10 months who were doing the same protocol as I was, except their diet was different. And at the end of the 10 months, here I am, disease-free, medication-free, healthier than I've ever been, on no medications. And most of the other people are either on the same medications but higher dosages, on more medications, had gained weight. Yes, they were sober, but let's be clear about what we're talking about when we talk about recovery. Sobriety is simply abstinence from use. Recovery, in my opinion, is a process of becoming whole.
Yeah.
And what are we actually seeking? Sobriety is a focus on a substance, right? It's a dependency-based model that is inaccurate in its attempt to treat what's actually happening, right? We say an individual, like, let's just say, for example, you check into treatment and you say, I can't stop using heroin. The current model will say, oh, then your problem is heroin. We're going to put you in a facility so we can safely detox you from heroin, which is great. That serves a great purpose. But then what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to accept that you are an addict, because you always have been, you always will be. Your problem is and always will be heroin. You need to abstain from it at all costs. You need to commit yourself to a group of individuals who get you to identify yourself by what you struggle with on an almost daily basis and move through life that way. And here's the problem with that. What we're talking about when we talk about addiction is someone who can't be present in their life. And so that inability to be present is a result of being powerfully and profoundly disconnected from the meaningful bonds of life that give humans the experience of being alive in a meaningful way. We're talking about a meaningful bond to ourselves, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually, that we want to get up, show up, and be present for on a daily basis. A meaningful bond with a purpose beyond ourselves that we want to show up and be present for. Meaningful bond with other people in our lives that matter to us that we want to show up and be present for. A meaningful bond with the natural world and a future that makes sense to us and is achievable in a meaningful way. When those bonds are severed by anything, it can be war trauma, like significant trauma, sexual trauma. It can be a narrative that was placed upon you by somebody you trusted. When those bonds are severed over the course of time, the experience is incredibly painful. And the more severed it becomes, the more difficult it is to see the way out of it. And when offered the opportunity to experience relief from that pain for a brief moment in time, we bond with that, whatever it is that allows us to escape that pain, because human beings are bonding creatures. That's what we do. And so the relationship is then formed with that substance or behavior, drugs, sex, food, gambling, and that becomes our relief from a painful place. It's the disconnection from the meaningful bonds that need to be treated. So I take you, for example. You come in, you say your problem is heroin, and then I ask you about those meaningful bonds, and you're clearly disconnected. And so in those early stages of disconnection, someone comes to you and says you don't have a meaningful bond with yourself, with other people, with a purpose, with the world around you, and you don't have a future that makes sense to you in a meaningful way. In fact, your future is terrifying. And I offer you heroin and you use it. And you have this unbelievable euphoric experience, which is an unbelievably successful relief of the pain of life. And the next day I come to you and I say, I can get you all the heroin you want. Would you like to keep using it? There's an incredibly high statistical likelihood that you're going to say yes. Now take you as you are now. And you strike me as a person who's meaningfully connected to most of those bonds in life, if not all of them. You know who you are and what you want in life, and you're meaningfully connected to showing up for that. You have people in your life and in your community that you want to show up and be present for. You have value that you offer them, and you share that value with them, and they share that same value with you. You have a future that makes sense in a meaningful way. You have probably a connection to the natural world. You get out in the air and in the sunlight. You move your body through the natural world. You're connected with the microbiome of the natural planet. If I take this version of you and I offer you heroin and you do it, you're going to have the same euphoric experience. It's going to give you unbelievable feelings of success and pleasure and relief. And I come back to you the next day and I say, I can get you all the heroin you want. Would you like to use it? There's a very high statistical likelihood you'll say no. Not because you're special, but because you have meaningful bonds in your life that you cannot be present for if you're on heroin.
Wow. That's an epiphany.
That's what we have to treat.
That is a huge epiphany.
So that's it's not just my view, it's a shared view. There's a great journalist named Johann Hari who wrote a book called Lost Connections. That's one of the most fascinating books I've ever read on mental health. He wrote a book called Chasing the Scream, which is about the truth behind the war on drugs. And what we need to do is we need to shift the narrative, because the narrative now around substance abuse says you're an addict because you're broken. The narrative that I'm presenting, the narrative that I got from amazing people like Johann Hari, it says you're an addict because your pain makes sense. And that is an empowering place to be. Because if your pain makes sense, then you are not what you struggle with. You are experiencing a reasonable response to life. And in that reasonable response to life, there's a reasonable solution. Yeah. We just need someone who's willing to listen to your needs.
It's a pathway out, and everybody's complexity of the darkness that they face is unique. And where that starts to be present, if the end goal really is to find and maintain and cultivate and love those meaningful connections, what does it take in that very simple state of making a choice to be present in your life? That could look like facing some demons. What are those demons? On the ground level, the practical application of getting to meaningful connections. First, I'm going to look in the present moment of my demons.
That's exactly, the pathway to recovery is about a willingness to be present with those dark parts of yourself. Face them and have the resiliency and grace to move through them with positive change. The acceptance that as you are living right now is all you know, and that's okay. And that what you know now is creating a situation that's unlivable, and that's okay. Because there are individuals in your pathway right now that are in your immediacy that say, I'm going to offer you opportunities for growth. And it's a willingness to say, I don't know any other way to do it, and I'm going to try what is being presented to me. What works, what I find joy in doing, I'm going to keep. What doesn't work, I'm going to find something else in alignment with this way of living, that's in alignment with my core values, that creates an opportunity for greater experience of living, and adopt that and try it. And nutrition is a profound opportunity for that. Because nutrition is maybe the most powerful example of the fact that there's never been anything wrong with us. Because you could take me, for example, who spent 15 years at over 300 pounds, diabetic, all these things, and you could say that was a failure of the human system, right? There's genetics, right? And then you could look at what happened when I changed what I ate, and you can say that is evidence that the human body has never given up on us. That it fights for us since the day we've been born. It is never sick. It is always healthy, fighting disease. That when given the opportunity, when an environment is presented to this amazing gift of biology, it shows up for you in ways you can't imagine. And what an example that is about the self, right? That these experiences that we have, depression, anxiety, they're not indications of failure, more so than they are a meaningful signal that makes sense given what's happening. That they are part of the breadth of human emotion. And that part of our cultural heritage is to view one half of the breadth of human emotion as indications of success and the other as an indication of failure. Willingly feel this half, ignore, avoid, insult, confront this half. And in doing so, we fail to meet some of what is best about being alive because we do not see the opportunity that exists in those wonderful moments of discomfort. The opportunity to see them not as our enemy and suffer, but as our constant, continuing ally that guides us towards how we best show up for ourselves. They tell you, take it inside if you're going to act like that. As guys, we man up. Don't be so damn emotional. That whole bullshit narrative, and it stunts.
You don't have to give up your masculine when facing emotions.
No,
it's that's the misconception.
But it's absolutely complete bullshit. And one of the things that, like I said, nutrition offered me this example, saying like, maybe everything you've been told about what it is to be you is based on somebody else's narrative of how they see the world. And I really believe that most of the struggles I experienced in my life started the day that somebody else told me something about myself that I was supposed to be, and I believed it.
Yeah, that goes back to the first thing we started this conversation about, which was, the realization of an external voice, influencing and imprinting you. And children are so impressionable.
I mean, there's data out there that says by age 12, most children have learned what they believe they need to be and do to be loved.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because you're taught how to be from age, let's say 5 to age 15. Do as I say, right? And then by the time you're 18, be yourself. Figure out who you are. Well, I've been taught my entire life that I can't do that. That success and the willingness and ability to be loved is based on conformity to the cultural standards or parental standards imposed upon us. Now, all of a sudden, I have to be something different than that. And I completely repress my ability to understand who I am and how I move through the world. And so that's a terrifying experience. And so a lot of times I think that's where that call it limbic inertia, where like what you hold to be true is confronted against what you're told to be true. And you can't stop this inertia. You can't stop this momentum of what you've been told you have to do to be acceptable. And all of a sudden you develop these core values and beliefs about the world, and it just like hits it like a ton of bricks. And that's a really confronting and painful experience because you have to give up what you've held to be true for so long. And that can be painful, that can be uncomfortable, and a lot of times substances, including destructive food substances, can be a momentary relief for that chaos, that turmoil.
Well, we've got a couple minutes left.
Yeah.
We've blasted through this.
Yeah, we have.
In the blink of an eye. Well, let's talk real quick, because we've got about 2 minutes left.
Sure. About
the experience of incorporating nutrition that really started to change your life. Because I loved food all of my life, but through utilizing these treatments and working on myself in a way of elevating vibration, just becoming the person that felt better day by day, I noticed that I was starting to experience just a lot more general energy from moving towards a plant-based diet. And one day I went to, the barbecue joint here in Texas because I loved the flavor, right? This has been a ritual for me and everything. And I go to eat this meal, and immediately I'm just hit with this wave of emotion, of sadness, of torture, of pain. And I realized that that feeling was coming from the plate in front of me. And, how could this be? But it was real. And at that moment, I had realized that, all of the energy that came into that plate, what it took for that plate to get here, the suffering that the animal had to go through, and all of that. And I also simultaneously realized through my experience and utilization of, superfood smoothies, I was just getting a lot more energy density, a lot more general energy and health from that diet. And I immediately never went back to eating meat at that point. And I believe that, people can thrive on a meat diet in in certain ways.
Yeah.
It's about really appreciating the energy in front of you and what it took for that to be present and what you're going to do with that. If you really appreciate the food in front of you and you turn that energy and convert it into something of great value and use, then if you're able to process that, great. Personally, I just don't find that process easy. I think it's far easier to go for a plant-based diet, and I just feel this unbelievable amount of energy. And I would imagine there was a point in your journey, your transformation, when you started to feel that greater amount of energy.
Absolutely.
Because you are plant-based or you're vegan?
I am. I'm plant-based and vegan. And the thing is that there was so much that was occurring within that first year of transformation for me that, moving my body regularly, doing lots of mindfulness and therapy, adopting a plant-based diet. So to identify diet alone as the solution is not something I can say is true. Right. I can say that my solution doesn't exist without it. And what I think is important is that experience that you're talking about, where you sit down to the plate and you get these energies, these emotions from the animal, the meat that's on your plate. Whether it's actually coming from the meat itself, I'm not sure. But what I do know for sure is that when you allow yourself the opportunity to willingly observe what it takes to put that meat on your plate, when you are open to the experience of that these are creative, unique, individual creatures with loving and connected bonds, as connected as our own.
And a desire to live.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The great quote is that all consciousness starts from a fundamental understanding that I'm life that wants to live amongst life that wants to live. Wow. When you come at it from that place, the choice you make is not one of knowing of what it took to get there, but knowing what it took to get there. And when you know it, it's a completely different understanding than knowing of it. It's like people who say, oh, I don't have to go to a slaughterhouse and see the stuff there. I watched it on a video. It's like, when you watch it on a video, you are separated between distance and time. The immediacy is not there. You can turn it off and it's gone. So you know of it.
Oh.
But if you're there, you can't look away.
It's going to be imprinted on you forever.
You smell it. You feel the heat. Mm-hmm. You see the animals. Now you know it. It's like the difference between being in the Holocaust and watching a movie about the Holocaust.
Oh, God, I've just, that's why I choose the lifestyle that I choose, is right. Because that's just too emotional. I already know how horrific that is. Yeah. I don't want to see it. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm already doing my thing.
Yeah.
I love animals.
But that's part of it, right? That's part of the reason why you experience that energy shift in you, is because there's a core value. There's a moral value of yours that barrier has been crossed by accepting what's on your plate. And not to say that your moral values and your core values is more right than an individual who consumes animals, but it's yours. Mm. And there's a justification that's required after making that decision, right? If there's an action that is performed with utter kindness and in true alignment with your core values, it never needs to be justified. But if justification is required for something of you, that means that it does not meet your values. And in that experience, you will start to have a shift in your energy. And that can be an amazing guide for people if they open themselves up to the opportunity to sense it, know it, feel it, and then act accordingly. Nutrition is one of those things that everybody does. Everybody eats 3 times a day, most of the time. You can use it as an act of self-love and self-care. You can use it as an affirmation and as a foundation that says, today I am choosing to be in alignment with how I want to live, whether that's eating 80% plants, 90% plants, 100% plants. Living in accordance with your values through statements made through action by what you put on your plate is a massively profound impact on how you move through the world. It is not just food. It is a statement about how you show up. And for me in recovery, that's how I used it. That's how it kept me moving forward on a daily basis of creating this sense of like knowing who I am, knowing what I want for the day, regardless of what the rest of my life looks like. People say, are you going to be vegan for life? I say, I don't know. I'm vegan right now. You know, it's showing up in accordance with your values, seeing them in your actions, creating that through nutrition, purposely choosing foods that heal, right? Using it as as an opportunity to say, I am worthy of this healing experience, not when I lose the weight, not when I reverse the disease, but right now and in this moment. And the thing is, I've been worthy of it since the day I was born. I just forgot. And so let food be that self-love tool. That's what it was for me. Food was my vehicle to learn self-love and self-acceptance. The belief that I was ashamed of things in myself because I believed that they were unlovable. What nutrition, mindfulness, and a lot of other things has helped me to learn is that shame doesn't arise because there's unlovable parts of ourselves. It arises because there are parts of ourselves we've been taught not to love. And when you can see through adopting nutrition and the reversal of disease, more so the gaining of health, they've never been broken. That these things that I felt that were unlovable about myself were because somebody told me they were an indication of being broken, and it's bullshit.
Yeah, we have to go through this process in life and realize some of these things that we've been imprinted with, they're just not ours.
They're not. Most of them are not. Most of them are not ours, you know? And so
being mindful,
yeah.
and I really encourage people just to be a little bit more mindful in the subtlest of ways will result in more profound epiphanies.
Yeah.
And whether that's just from understanding what it took for whatever meal I have in front of me to get onto my plate, that whole process is expansive.
Yeah. And give up all or nothing. Just, focus on what you know to be true, what you know you need to learn more of, what you're willing to gain and what you're willing to let go of, and where you need support. It just takes radical honesty. Be willing to lean into it. And if you can't do it yourself, find someone who can hold space for you to lean into those moments and just consistently build on those positive changes.
Yeah. We are all gods. We're all superhumans. We all have a right to be superhumans. And I want to thank you for being on the podcast.
My pleasure, man.
I know we went over in time, but
That's okay.
It's worth it. Maybe we'll just structure our podcast so that they're as long as whatever conversation needs to be had. And this is a fantastic one. What an extraordinary story. I can't wait to watch it 5 times over. Honestly, there's so much to learn. As a Christmas gift for myself to you, I'd like to offer you our Ascension Brain.
Yes, of course.
So this is an all-natural, it is a vegan supplement, and all it really is, it's rounding out our diet to enhance the mitochondria.
Yes.
With just minerals, amino acids, and just general superfoods.
Oh my God, this has everything in it.
So I think you'll love it. And,
I will. Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is great.
Be well.